Okay, hello everybody. My name is Manfred Bremer. I'm a senior editor Computerwoche, and I'm going to be your host this webinar. With me is Michael Collins, Global Vice President, WORKSPACE Practice at ASG Technologies. In the beginning, some housekeeping. Of course, you can post questions. If you have questions, please type them in the question tab in your console, and we try to answer them if they fit in between the slides. And also at the end, there will be a Q&A session. And in case there are very tough questions that we can't answer during this webinar, we try to answer them separately via email. So the workplace of the future. I remember during my career 15 years ago, so we already talked and wrote about the workspace of the future. Is there a chance that we really get to the point where we say, well, that's it? What you say, Michael?
It's interesting to talk about the workplace of the future, because in you and I have had these conversations of the continuing evolution of the workplace. And as more and more millennials come into the workplace, as we have a global distributed workforce, we simply don't have boundaries. And with that, defining a workplace becomes somewhat unique in conversation. And so it's going to be a very intriguing dialogue today. And I look forward to getting into understanding some of the results from the data that you've pertained and moving forward in our discussions.
Okay, so this webinar will be a little bit interactive. So we have a live poll, and we start with the first one now. The question, if you put please a slide, the first one is, what is your motivation to build the workplace of the future? So you can vote now, and then we wait a little bit, and then we discuss the results.
Manfred, it really begs an interesting point of view to say, what is the motivation? Is the motivation driven by global expansion? Is that motivation based off of dissatisfaction from an employee survey? Is it simply changes in the workforce? I don't think necessarily possibly one right answer or one motivation. And so then I think the question I would have back to you while the survey is out to the audience is, how does the enterprise balance multiple pressure points all asking for the same thing?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we have a lot of results for this question, and yeah, I'm keen to show you to you. So we have the results, and okay, of course it was multiple choice. So the highest things are improve innovation and creativity with 75%, same as work more customer orientated, and 50% are increased productivity, flexibility, and agility. And they also 25% said they want to decrease spendings and they want to get a higher attractiveness as an employer. So that's,
when we see these results, it's not shocking to see innovation and creativity being one of the top motivators. I think that we certainly at ASG and in the WORKSPACE practice globally hear about the desire for there to be improved processes, additional technologies, and bringing those together generates that efficiency. It generates some of the reduction in spending in both CapEx and OpEx. And so I'm not shocked to see this, and I'm not sure if you are, but what this tells me is that there's a global mindset and a global shift that says, as transformative enterprises start to address the people and the processes and the technologies, the outcome of that is reduction in spending, it is increased efficiencies, it is increased productivity. So this is very, very interesting to see that without getting too far into the dialogue, we already have a unique alignment in some of our conversation points today and what the audience is thinking. And I don't know if you would agree with that.
Definitely. So I think we will be able to show that if you start with the workplace of the future, you get a whole bunch of things. So you have one major target, but at the end you see you also have these side effects which are very positive for your company. Indeed.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so what is the workplace of the future? We have already talked a little bit about it. Do you have some kind of definition, Michael? What is it? Because it's quite a wide field, I think. What you can.
It is in fact very wide. What is the workplace of the future? That's unique because it is so personalized these days. As somebody myself, I travel quite extensively, and so my workplace is undefinable in so much that I move between multiple offices, multiple countries, and so my workplace is more technology driven, so that I can be connected and feel efficient and feel accessible to my data, my content, my apps. For other people, that could be driven off of more ergonomics and in the environment in their office, along with some technology or processes. So this is very personalized. And I think one of the things that we've talked about quite a bit at ASG, and we talk about this with our customers that are in these digital transformation experiences, is consumer IT has made its way into the enterprise. And what I mean by that is consumer IT has taught us that we can have things the way that we want them. And that certainly has made its pervasiveness into people choosing platforms, whether that's a PC or a Mac, or excuse me, an Apple, whether that's choice of browser, whether that's the way that they communicate in different tool sets. The workplace of the future becomes almost a one-to-one conversation or a one-to-one need. And with that being said, I'm not sure you can put a globally acceptable definition around this, but I think what you can do is offer a flexible opportunity by which employees and enterprises can both have their needs met. And when that happens, that is when you start to see some really, really amazing results.
Yeah, that's a good question, good answer, actually. So we wanted to learn more about the workplace of the future, and therefore we conducted a study in summer, and that was in cooperation with ASG, and the results are based on more than 1,500 qualified interviews in the DACH region. That means Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And I think an interesting and also important point is that we try to cover the company perspective of the workplace of the future as well as the employee perspective. As Michael already said, it's somewhere the interests have to meet some point, and then you get most of the productivity, and it really works out pretty well. So we have some key findings of the study, and I want to share these insights with you now with a few slides. So the first result is we asked the questions, what kind of topics belong to the workplace of the future? And on the left side, you see the perspective from the perspective of the company. And there, 57% of the consulted companies associate mobility and technology as a primary change with the workplace of the future. Other topics were other working hours models, and also, of course, the possibility to work at home or to remote work with 48%. Another important point was the increased usage of technological possibilities with 46%, especially cloud solutions. Interesting also. Yep.
No, go ahead. I apologize, Manfred.
No problem. Interesting also is that while everybody these days is talking about automation, robotics, and artificial intelligence, these aspects didn't rank highly among the subjects. And on the other hand, from the perspective of the employee, you see the most important topics are how they will work in the future. So 79% said when they associate with the workplace of the future the rethinking of work or work time models, and also the possibility to work from home or do remote work. Second place is technology, or rather the increased use of available technology with 73 and 63%. And then, of course, there comes also a change of the company structure with 62%. So
Manfred, when we are talking to our customers and partners globally, this aligns with where the conversations are across the globe. This is not geocentric, and I think what you are seeing here is very much where the needs of the enterprise and the desires of the enterprise are matching with the end users. We have conversations around mobility on a daily basis, and it's not shocking because they statistically will say the average user or knowledge worker, consumer, has 3 to 5 devices on them at any given time. So our connectivity is incredibly important to us, and I think it's actually quite amusing to have the conversation and say, can you survive a day without your phone? Can you survive a day without your iPad? And while it sounds funny, and I can certainly poke fun at myself, I have 6 devices on me at all times, and that is just the way that we are now accustomed to working. And to the 79% of working from home, there's a survey that was not a survey, a study that was done years ago by the Human Capital Institute in the United States, talking about why and how people like to work from home. And what was interesting was the candor of the results stated that it wasn't a level of comfort. It wasn't so that they could have the TV on or feed the dog or scoot out for a long lunch. It was the reduction in what they called the water cooler conversations, or the times when another colleague will stop by to have a quick conversation. That takes so much of your day that you don't realize. And so you find people feeling more efficient at home. They feel they get more done. They're able to concentrate better. And so it's interesting that that desire to be more efficient, to do more, to be able to give better results is driving this need for additional technology. And also, we are a global society. It's funny to think about needing passports and border controls, because it almost sounds silly to me in many ways. We are a global industry. We're a global mindset. We talk, you and I are in multiple countries right now. Mobility is the modern age. And so how an enterprise adopts to that and creates policies and standards that still allow there to be this mindset in this day and age, that's that meeting point of how does all this come together. And I'm anxious to hear some more of your findings from the results of the study.
So that's, to summarize, it's like the workplace of the future for the companies of today, because that's how companies work. They are global and they are trying to become innovative. And yeah, it's like our slides. Next slide shows there are already collaboration tools in use, and the employees want to have more of them because they know it's more and more. You're not working on your own, but you have to work with other workers together and to get your job done. And so we were asking what kind of collaboration tools are already in use and which collaboration tools are needed. And of course, in use, the highest ranking of currently used tools is the good old telephone conference. But the employees want more. They want self-help tools, with over 30% of the participants mentioned that, and collaborative reviewing, which is also very important.
And I think we take for granted how much we collaborate. Think about how many times we text in a day, or we use an application like WhatsApp, and then on top of that, Skype, Yammer, Slack, sometimes multiple, because we have so much data. We have information coming at us from all directions. They statistically will say that in a current modern day, we create more content than the entire 1970s decade. And that's pretty awe-striking to think about. And to think that we have applications, dozens of applications, dozens of avenues by which we are consuming, synthesizing, harmonizing, and making decisions on in real time. It's no kidding that we need to collaborate, and we need to have the ability to do this as quickly as possible. And it's not uncommon. I'm sure you've seen this. Despite even having multiple collaboration tools, if we can't reach somebody, we'll text them. If we can't text them, we'll call them. If we call them, we'll text them again. This all goes to the fluidity of how we work, and it's becoming something that it's not a dependency, it's an absolute need. It's a must-have, and the enterprise, the very transformative enterprises realize that if these tools aren't provided, we're going to find a way to get them, or we're going to find a way around them.
Definitely, and I think you also have, if you have critical data, you have to look for a way to have this communication in a safe way. So WhatsApp, for example, is a bit tricky in this cases, and so, but there are other company-specific tools which are probably better to use.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so now we have our second live poll, and this time we want to know, and later on I will show you why we are asking this question. We want to know, where do you see your future, your company on the way to the workplace of the future?
You know, Manfred, another great question. And as you, not you in particular, but as companies have these conversations and you get deeper into dialogue regarding what type of workplace is, you start to understand different methods of approach. You start to look at different ways, different drivers, as we talked about in the first poll. These conversations can become very, very strategic. They can also, if they're not in some way focused, they can become very, very distracting, because where's your start point? What are you trying to achieve? And because a future workplace can have so many different touch points, different types of employees, different countries, cultures, it can almost become a ongoing distraction. So yeah, I would ask you, as the poll is being taken, where do you see a good start point, or where would you guide a company to say, this is where we have to embark?
Well, depends where the pain points are, actually. I think every company knows very well where the pain hurts, and sometimes, like in Germany or Europe especially, we have these regulations as well, which are also a good point to start. If you say, okay, we have something to move on the right path, so we can also combine these efforts and do it in a safe way, and do it in a way which is good for the productivity and for the flexibility of our employees. So that's also, there are different drivers which you can start now, and then you take the whole to have one reason, but then you can make an effort and try to make a overall solution, and that's probably better once you're starting. Okay, I've seen we have some results of our live poll, and so 35% are saying a beginning is made, and 13% are telling us they are on a good way, and 13% are still observing and waiting what they're gonna do with the workplace of the future.
And I think this is very representative of where and how my team and the team at ASG on the WORKSPACE's practice, we see a lot of our customers, and to say the beginning is made really aligns to what's going on globally, and that is a big push for digital transformation. And the words can almost be a slightly deceiving. And when you hear the word digital transformation, one can quickly think that connotates to say it's simply technology, and that's absolutely not the case. It's very much around the harmonization of not only the technical transformation, but then how that can also, and it needs to also include processes, it needs to include people, and bringing all that together by simply looking at changing one of those three pillars. You don't create an atmosphere where transformation happens. You create a repetitive cycle by which we think a quick solve or a quick gain is to give another tool, or to just simply change a process, or to add another process. And so to see a poll that says the numbers of 75% is good, in my opinion, and that is because we've learned from past mistakes, or we've learned that we need to holistically approach what this future workplace is, and what a future workspace is, and how embarking upon that journey is not only transformative to the end user, but as groups upon groups of end users and different functions of the company gain these efficiencies, it can create tremendous opportunities for organizations to grow, to expand, new products, new services, geographies, you name it. So it's good to hear that you don't have a thought pattern that companies are further down the line, because I would be concerned that the strategy may not be as encompassing as it needs to be.
Yeah, it somehow corresponds with our results, because as you will see in the next slide, we also asked this question in our survey, and surprise, surprise, 20% of the companies we asked said they are on the way to the workplace of the future. And on the other hand, 40% say they've already gone far, and 38% told us they just see themselves in the beginning of the development. So, okay, here.
Yeah, and Manfred, I would ask you, from having access to the data and being part of this for a little bit longer than I have been, when you hear a number of 40% of companies feel that they are further into their plan and strategy, and yet you then look at some of the surveys and data that you and I've spoken about regarding employee dissatisfaction, where's the delta there? How are some organizations feeling that they're much further ahead, yet we continue to hear and see reports that contradict that?
Yeah, definitely. And we have another slide which shows this in detail. So that's in the eyes of the decision makers, because they don't see some of the pain points of the employees, because they have different way to work, and they don't see everything in detail what the normal employee has to work with everyday level. So they say, in totally, they say their company is pretty advanced, but within the workplace of the future. But if you look in the details, if you look at the work of special employees, you see it's just not like this. And that also shows, like we were asking the employees exactly this question. We asked them, how content are you with your current workplace? And well, there the results are a bit different to the way the employers see their companies. So it shows here every fourth employee is a little or very unhappy with the current IT and technical equipment of the workplace. And which is even worse, say like more than 80% see room for improvement with their workplace. So that shows that it's really still a lot of work to be done to really get to the place where they say, okay, now I have all the tools and all the equipment and everything, so I can do my work as I wish to do, let's say.
And it's interesting that you say that, because the platform that my team here at ASG works on, and the entire WORKSPACE's team for ASG really has harnessed some of those pain points and brought it together in a platform we'll talk about a little bit later here, that is not only very centered on customization and flexibility for the end users, and also meets the needs of the enterprise by way of security and policy management configuration, but also in that customization and in some of the technology that we introduce with our platform, it really gives each individual the ability to create their own efficiency, their own method of working, their own access to applications and content, and do so with the only need of a browser and connecting into the web. So it removes the necessity of particular hardware, particular software, and it really does address what we're seeing here, which is 25%. Every fourth employee, I would say maybe every other employee, every third employee, because again, that consumer mindset is very much with us at all times, and that is being able to work in a manner, via technologies that we feel the most comfortable.
Definitely. So we already learned that it's important to involve employees in the planning of the workplace of the future, because it's them who are actually having to do with the workplace later on. So we asked the question to the companies, and we asked them, to which amount are you involving employees in the planning of the workplace of the future? And the results are a bit, frustrating, actually, I would say, because only a third of the companies told us they have asked the employees for feedback about how the organization can develop a workplace of the future. Almost a third informed the workforce regularly about the process of implementing, and around 30% went above and beyond mere communication and analyzed the needs of the workforce. And only 1 in 4 companies took the step of creating work groups or setting up user profiles to get more individualization. So, Michael, why is it so important to include employees in the planning of the workplace at an early stage, before you have already started, actually?
It's really a couple things. One is, it's difficult for an enterprise to develop the policies and standards that are going to meet the needs of everybody, unless they understand how those individuals work. When you think about just the simply differences in jobs, the way that I work in my team and being as global as I am is very different from other ASG employees that are in offices every day. It sounds silly to say that, but that's very different. So how does an enterprise develop a standard that is as flexible for me, and yet implement that standard for somebody that works in a very, very different environment?
Definitely.
Getting the employees involved. There's also just the simple thought pattern and need to understand different technologies. There are individuals that are more technically advanced or have a better understanding of what's available. There's different ways and processes for functions. And so it's important to understand where those pain points are, as you very well said earlier in the conversation, and then try to find commonalities and address some of the commonalities. Instead of simply dictating what should be used and how it should be used, because it's very, very common, and I hear this in almost every conversation I have with partners and companies of IT leaders saying, how do we stop rogue devices? How do we stop backdoor access? How do we prevent data from going outside? And that is not driven by people wanting to be malicious. It's exactly the opposite. They're trying to either work more or work more efficient. So unless you understand what's motivating some of these, I'll call them rogue activities, you can't mitigate them.
Okay. So we also asked the companies, do you have a company-wide strategy for creating the workplace of the future? And surprise was that more than a third of all the companies said they have established a company-wide strategy, while another 27% that the implementation of new workplace and mobility concepts goes department by department. 70% also said they are planning an overall strategy, and only 1 in 7 companies has not yet concerned itself with strategies how to do it. Is that surprising for you?
It's not, and it's certainly something that the needs of the business are being listened to, and now you have, whether it's people that are designated as heads of innovation and or a workplace strategist, this is becoming a very dominating topic, so that not only can efficiencies be gained and cost reductions occur, but also happy employees don't leave, and happy employees tell other people about their workplace, and it becomes easier to recruit. So there's a vast number of reasons why this is something that is very omnipresent with executive leaders and boardrooms all over the world.
So we asked the employees in our survey what do you wish for your future workplace? And there we found out, okay, the main topic, as we've already had in our survey before, is the wish list covers mainly flexibility and networking. Means 3/3 of the employees wish more flexible working hours and flexible access to all data, independent where they are, at which place. And interesting in this case also that things like we heard in some years ago, like BYOD or the communications through social media, which are formerly very high rated, but now they normally pretty meaningless to the employees. They want more flexibility and not to bring their own devices and things like this.
And this is one of the largest motivators for companies and our partners to talk to ASG about our platform, not only because of the access, but also being able to simply get to a browser in the internet, have access to their entire workspace and their applications, their what we call widgets, and we'll talk about what those are shortly. But the world that we live in now calls for flexibility, and so to have access to a platform that gives you that availability on demand, if I can use that phraseology, but also gives the enterprise the ability to manage what is accessible, not only accessible when you're in or outside the network, but then combining that against whether that is a managed device or an unmanaged device. So at ASG, as we looked at our platform, so much of the results that came out of your study are some of the specific thought patterns that went into how we not only architected the platform, but then as we have conversations with our partners and our customers, we make sure that we try to balance and juxtapose the conversation so that not only are the needs of the enterprise met, but we certainly as well try to address the needs of the end user and create that happy medium.
Okay. So as we had, I think the next key finding is similar to what we had already, because we are asked to which extent would you call your current workplace a workplace of the future? And that's I think we had it already. 80% say they don't have a workplace of the future, and a ridiculous small amount, 2.5% say it's exactly like they would imagine the workplace of the future. So that's like the reality is a bit frustrating, because it's like if you think of how many employees have to work in an environment where they not actually happy, which you say, okay, there's still a lot of room to improvement. It's somehow frustrating, isn't it?
Yes, this is not at all shocking to me. From conversations around the world, I've heard employees say we can't access the internet. We're not allowed to use storage applications like Dropbox or Box. I've worked on iOS for 10 years. I was handed a Dell. I mean, some of it seems very, very trivial, but I can certainly again poke fun at myself and say, despite having worked at Microsoft for years, I'm now fully entrenched as an iOS user, and as I try to help my daughter or help my parents with a PC, I literally fumble with it. So while it seems trivial, it can actually become not only frustrating, but it can create incredible inefficiencies. And so to say 4 out of 5 employees don't have a workplace of the future, I'm shocked it's not 5 out of 5.
Okay, or maybe the other 5. The other ones didn't want to confess that they are working in a frustrating environment. I'm not sure. Interesting is we have, at least in Central Europe, we have this war for talents. Like it's in some places very difficult to get new employees, specialists, and so all the companies are trying to attract them. And interesting is that with which means they're trying to attract them and what the employees really need and want. So we were asking the employees, if you have two job offers with the same salary, what would be the important points to choose one of them? And it turns out that most employees prefer to have more flexible hours and less compulsory time in the office, and that something like a company car for the private use is not so much important anymore. And we have this story with millennials and all this stuff. The interesting point is there's not much difference between the different age groups, and also no difference in values between men and women is also not significant. And
no, and I think that flexibility really, when we think about what we've talked about for the last part of the conversation, we're a global society, we're a global economy. So it's almost shocking to me that more and more flexibility isn't given. Simply when you look at the number of people that have colleagues that they have to interact with around the world in multiple time zones, why shouldn't an employee, as long as they're doing everything that's expected of them, if they can work between 8 in the morning and noon and then take part of the afternoon off and then have to re-engage in the evening hours because of time zones around the world, why shouldn't that just be acceptable as long as everything is being achieved? Because otherwise, what happens? Does the employee not speak to their colleague, or does the employee simply conduct everything via email, and therefore it can not only create delays, but it can also be something where both employees are working on obsolete data or incorrect data? It almost just seems that more and more flexibility shouldn't even be a conversation. It should just be the way that we are.
We asked another questions. This time we asked the decision makers of companies and employees about the risk which they think could arise from the development towards the workplace of the future. And okay, they also see the other side of the medal. The flexibility you mentioned, there's also a concern that you will be expected from your employer or from your customers that you will be available around the clock. That's 24 hours, 7 days a week. And well, that's probably the other side of the flexibility we should be aware of. Another fear is that you become more dependent on IT and internet connectivity in order to do the job.
And certainly the fear of always having to be connected is top of mind with a number of people. The other one, however, of fear of being dependent on IT, we are now a digital society. We are now, we're not dependent, but laptops and applications, etc. That is the society we live in. So I don't see how that would go backwards, but I certainly think that ensuring that we have a work-life balance and ensuring that we're not always connected, that is important. That has to be something that we continually strive to achieve.
Okay. Well, that's the key findings of the study. And so I think the main topic is, how do you involve the employees? And that's where I hand over to you, Michael, to tell us a bit about your ASG use cases and your solutions.
I appreciate that. Involving the employees has to be something that happens along every step of the way, whether that is looking at processes, whether that is discussing the tool sets. Employees have to be involved across every conversation. And that's not to say that the enterprise cannot develop the standards or policies. It's to meet those needs and to understand that the needs of employees change based off of function, based off of their location, a number of different factors. And so taking an approach of one size fits all clearly hasn't worked. And it is something that we've recognized a need for change. We've recognized a better way of doing business. So with that said, how did we evolve into the digital workplace? For years, and this is actually still very pervasive, we have organizations that will dictate what what a technology and a process is. And specific to technology, we've seen over and over organizations, day one, when you go into your new employee orientation or your first day on the job, you're handed something. And that something can be a laptop, could be a desktop. It is configured, provisioned, loaded with software, security, a full load of technology, and you've had no input to that. So as I had said, when I started at ASG, I made it a point to discuss in the hiring, because I know how I operate, and I know how I can be the most efficient. I know the methods by which I can be the most productive. And that evolution has certainly gone from some organizations looking at changing that policy of we're going to tell you what you can or cannot use, to, as you had mentioned, the BYOD, CYOD strategy. With our solution, we take it one step further to say, why should an organization even need to think about devices? Devices are expensive. Devices need to be managed. There's obviously a financial impact to devices. And then, of course, personalization and customization comes into play. So why not have a platform that simply requires a browser, your Active Directory credentials, and a URL? And therefore, if you want to use Firefox, use Firefox. You want to use Chrome, use Chrome. But also use that on whatever device you want, whatever platform you want. So we certainly see the evolution of the workplace changing based off of individuality, but we also see that the workspace, that digital platform, moving away from a client server model, whether that's in place or not. We see it moving all the way to the top, as you see here, to being very much just browser based. And so when you think about the platform that we've built at ASG, we look at it from being able to access your platform, your work, anywhere at any time. And that can be on any type of device. That device can be managed or unmanaged. That device should, and in fact, the way that we've built the platform, have a very responsive design. So if at one moment you happen to access your workplace from a MacBook Pro using Chrome, and then you end up leaving the office and at home you're a Microsoft Surface user, that workplace and that responsive design, your applications, they're right there in the way that you left them, if I can use that terminology. And what's behind the scenes is the ability for the enterprise to say that Michael can't access all of the very sensitive applications or the sensitive data because I've now left the network and or I'm on an unmanaged device. And so our platform isn't so consumer-esque that the enterprise loses their ability to manage. In fact, we actually give probably more capabilities to manage that, because by using a workspace, as we call it, and using WORKSPACE 10, the URL access is the way by which all applications are accessed. It's the way that all your files can be attained. It's the way that you can see in the larger picture in the background what we call a widget. I'm going to talk about those in a moment. All of that's accessed via URL. So disabling or changing the policy controls through the administration, the enterprise can very, very quickly and immediately take away the ability for either data or content to be accessed, or in fact accessed at all. So when we think about what we've talked about today, and that was people, processes, and technologies, one of the key pieces of intellectual property in our platform is what we call a widget. And a widget is what you're seeing right here on the screen, and that is our ability to take multiple data sources into a single pane of view and allow either some type of analysis and or findings and or efficiencies to happen in a single pane of glass. And so in this example, we've taken data from ServiceNow and Salesforce and integrated it into this single widget. And this widget would allow somebody to look at instantaneously the number of issues for one of their customers and the amount of money that would be at risk. Why is that important? Well, first, by having this widget, the organization does not have to grant individual user access to these different platforms. So that's a cost savings. Secondarily, time. this person would no longer have to log into ServiceNow, then log into Salesforce, do an analysis. The time savings is quite remarkable. And then lastly, we can see here in the example, if you look at the number 4, if the total number of opportunities is more than $1 million, we have the ability in our widget to actually send an email alert to sales right from the widget. So we've saved a tremendous amount of time. We're working in real-time data, because not only is this data populated in the widget, but anytime the data changes in Salesforce or ServiceNow, that widget is updated live. So it is truly the ability to work in real-time data in a very, very efficient manner. And this is all populated particularly in this person's dashboard. And each dashboard, there can be multiple dashboards. You can have as many as you'd like in our platform, and they're all completely customizable. So what you would see, Manfred, would be very different from what I would see. And that's no different from the way that my laptop functions to your laptop. And a real example of this is what we've done internally here at ASG. I worked with one of our corporate recruiters. Her name is Jackie. And I'd asked Jackie where some of her pain points were. And one of the interesting points that she said to me was that about 30% of her job, which is, if we calculate that out, over 600 hours of time in a year, is responding to candidates. And she said that she uses LinkedIn, Indeed, and Glassdoor, all SaaS-based applications, as methods to recruit employees. And I'd said, what and how does that work? And Jackie said she does, in fact, post jobs to each one of these or different platforms, and she will routinely get inquiries from potential employees, either asking questions about the role, location, a whole myriad of different conversations. And she said what she has noticed is that if she doesn't respond in 10 days, she typically can lose a candidate. But she also said it's very 30%. A lot of time goes into doing this, because she has to, again, log into each platform, then go into the inboxes, respond. And she says, it would be great to me if we could build a widget where, as you see here, and this is a live example, where her widget tells her on the left side what platform somebody's contacted her on, the candidate's name, and the days of responses. And so we're in the process of helping Jackie build a widget where, right as she were to log in, she would see this widget, see the candidate's name, and then as it turns red, we would grab canned language that tells the candidate how to contact Jackie, how to submit their resume, and send it right back out through that platform. So by creating this dynamic technology, we have changed a process, or a series of processes. We've provided technology, and we've enabled Jackie. So again, people, process, and technology. We've enabled Jackie to have 600 hours of time back. Now, obviously, some of that's still going to be utilized by interacting with just this one particular widget. But it's tremendous to think about the other things Jackie can now focus on, other strategic initiatives, other things that her leadership can have her expand her role into. And this is some of the transformative technology that the WORKSPACE's 10 platform delivers back to individuals and enterprises.
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if there would be a widget for editors to see which subjects they haven't addressed within a certain time. So we can probably build something like this as well.
You and I can try to build that offline.
Okay. Well, we have another live poll, the last one. And this time we want to ask you, the audience, where do you see the biggest challenges in implementing the workplace of the future? So you can vote now.
It's interesting. I'm looking at some of the potential responses here, and I certainly don't want to give away any thoughts that I have, but the challenge that is not spoken of often, Manfred, and you and I talked about this before we got on the webinar. The greatest challenge is in my mind where to start. It's certainly many of these things here, but also the one of ensuring that you have the executive support and that ongoing not only funding but support and guidance, that this doesn't happen one time, right? The future workplace changes day in and day out, and it certainly doesn't mean that for a period of time you can't have a set of standards and policies, but the ongoing revisions to those policies, the ongoing revisions to understanding the employee needs. That's certainly something that you and I talked about at great length.
Definitely, yes. Yeah, you have to live the change, and especially from the leadership, that's a very important point that it has to go through the whole company from the top to the bottom and vice versa, I think. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Well, we have the results. Yeah, 80% say they see the biggest challenge in the greater dependency on IT and internet access. So that's what we had already. This corresponds pretty much with our survey. 40% say other difficulties. Okay, we didn't we can't go deeper into this. And 20% are the permanent availability and the possibility to get monitored through the new technology, and also 20% were the additional effort through complicated things. Yeah. So if you want to get more insights, you see here the short link, ASG WORKSPACES. You can get more details on the study we conducted, and also more information on the solutions from ASG. And also you can contact Michael Collins at asg.com. Also now you can have another chance to ask questions if you like. 1 second. Okay. Well, I have one question to you, Michael, again. So what do you recommend? Where should a company start while implementing the workplace of the future? Should they go step by step, or department by department, or do a big bang through the whole company, or do pilots? What do you reckon?
Yeah, and that's a great question that we talk about quite often. Is it's ensuring that not only, and we talked about this today, it's not only ensuring that the employees have been heard, but really looking at the data and truly understanding what the pain point is, and not having a quick reaction or a quick fix, but taking the data, understanding the data, maybe even possibly following up with additional questions or a secondary survey, and from there developing a holistic strategy that talks to the people, addresses those pain points, if need be, revisits processes or creates a new one, maybe even reduces a current one. And from a technical perspective, we too often than not see organizations want to just quick fix. Another tool, another application, another. Sometimes another isn't the right. It's reduction. It's removing. So it's hard to come to any of those conclusive findings until you truly understand the voice of the organization. So in short, it's important to have a clear strategy and a clear pathway to uncovering what the pain points are, and from those mapping that wish list, if I can use that term, against the overall corporate strategy, and finding a way to bring those together. Any other way is simply, in from what I've seen, certainly in the last year of talking to companies literally around the world, not having that cohesive strategy leads to spending on tools and technology and or processes that actually just create additional frustration to the employees.
Okay, we have one question from the audience which corresponds very much with this question. The question is, are you working with the Work Council and HR department to deploy the workspace throughout the company?
Absolutely. It's a great question. It's absolutely important that not only HR, but all the different departments are involved. But in particular to HR, it's important that HR is part of the conversation, because they obviously have the ability to talk to the employees. They, along with works councils, are hearing some of those frustrations or concerns. And when we talked about the cohesiveness of the strategy and what is the starting point, that's one of the greatest places to go is what are employees saying? What are the needs? Why are people leaving, and or why are complaints happening? So it is absolutely a great starting point. And it's not just that HR should be involved, all the functions should be involved. But that is certainly a natural place where I internally turn to start uncovering where and how we could deploy this internally. So to the audience, that was a great question.
Yeah, that's another question, which is also something we didn't cover so much. The question is, do you include physical office hardware in the future workplace?
Absolutely. The workplace of the future isn't just about getting work done. It's about being comfortable doing that. And one of the things that I've heard companies and employees say is, if you give me a brand new desk in a brand new building and all the technology and all the processes in the world, that's great. But if I have to wear a suit every day, I'm not comfortable. So the workplace of the future is encompassing of everything. And I think sometimes we leave that out. So yes, office ergonomics are important. Your desk setup, your office setup, facilities in the office, what you have access to by way of drinks or canteens, all of those things need to be brought into play. And even being able to potentially grab your laptop and, if need be, go get a beverage and sit in the canteen and work, and making sure you have Wi-Fi access. It really is about how do individuals, or how can individuals be the most comfortable and most efficient.
Okay, so thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much to the audience. And yeah, have a good day.
Thank you, Manfred. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bye.